All right, here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Rogue in Motion webinar for June. We have been going through different topics that, in my experience, which my name is Claire McLean, I'm a physical therapist who specializes working with people who have Parkinson's. I have a wellness program in California and online called Rogue. In my experience, there are specific lifestyle factors. My experience, and also the research says, there are specific lifestyle factors that help people live their healthiest, best lives while living with Parkinson's. And so this year we are going through a webinar series. We started with kind of an introduction, talking a little bit about those different lifestyle factors. And we had a meeting about assessments and how to measure things. And then we have focused on exercise for a couple of meetings. And then the next topic we are going to talk about today, which is nutrition. So we will send out a follow-up email with the recording of this call if anybody wants to rewatch it or check it out, or if you're not able to stay for the whole thing. And we'll also send out links for the previous meetings. If you didn't watch those, you are welcome to. And then we will continue to have another meeting each month. So first of all, when it comes to nutrition, so as I said, I'm a physical therapist. I am not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. I am coming from the perspective of, as a physical therapist, I see that not only exercise is important for people with Parkinson's, but nutrition and fuel is also very important for people with Parkinson's to feel and do their best. Makes a big difference in a lot of ways, which is what we will talk about today. I do highly recommend finding a nutritionist or a registered dietitian in your area that you can work with. In some cases, it can be hard to find someone who specializes in Parkinson's and is familiar with the research and some of the key factors when it comes to medication and things like that. So although my main focus is exercise, we also really try to keep ourselves, myself and our team, we try to keep ourselves well informed on the other aspects of wellness that can be helpful, and at least be able to share information for people to get started and kind of know where to look and what are some things I could start to make a change in terms of my diet or other lifestyle factors. But if you really want more of a specific meal plan, specific recommendations based on other aspects of your health, that's when you really want to work with a registered dietitian. But first, just to intro is what we eat does matter. Sometimes there's conflicting and confusing information out there because those who sell us foods that maybe aren't the best for us, highly processed foods and other things, have a real financial interest in their industry. And so there can be a lot of confusing information out there that can contradict itself. But ultimately, what we eat matters. Diet is the number one risk factor for death in the US. And this, of course, could be different. You may live in a different country, but probably most of us are in the US. So dietary risk is the number one factor that influences our health as we're living and influences when we die. And so, yes, what we eat matters. And no matter what your age is, you can make changes that can be beneficial. So consideration specifically for individuals living with Parkinson's, brain health. There are a lot of different things happening with Parkinson's that are negative, and exercise is helpful. Getting good sleep is important for our brain functioning well. And so let's see. All right, someone is saying that they're not able to hear me. If you are able to hear me, can you give me a thumbs up? Are some of you hearing me? Okay. So, Beth, if you're not able to hear, my guess is that it is a volume on your device. So if you could go, and she can't hear me telling her this, is your volume turned all the way up? All right. So hopefully we can get volume turned up so that you're able to hear me. Again, the considerations that we're thinking about specifically with nutrition and Parkinson's are brain health. So we want to eat things like antioxidants to decrease oxidative stress. There's things happening at the level of the cells in our brain, and what we eat matters in terms of cellular health in our brain. And a big part of that is inflammation. So we want to eat to decrease inflammation throughout our body, including our brain. We care a lot about gut health and digestion. Constipation is a common symptom for people with Parkinson's. And there's a lot of research coming out about how gut health is very related to brain health. So yes, we want our brain to be healthy. We also want our gut to be healthy. We want to be digesting our food, and we want things to be moving along at the right speed. We don't want food to be moving through our system too fast or too slow. There's a happy medium with consistent bowel movements pretty much every day. Medication absorption is significant for people with Parkinson's as well. I just attended a lecture on Saturday from a movement disorders neurologist, and he was saying that over time, when you live with Parkinson's a long time, sometimes medication doesn't work quite as well over time as it did when you first started taking it. And there's multiple factors as to why that could be true. One is that the amount of dopamine that you are producing in your brain may be changing over time. So it might be that you need more medication to get to a healthy level over time. But he also said a big factor is gut health, and that they're seeing that people over time are not absorbing the medication as well. So that's one of the reasons that it doesn't work as well over time. So if we can help our gut stay healthy, keep food moving through our system, help the medication be absorbed well, then we're really going to see that we feel better overall. So, and then at the end and kind of throughout, I'm going to show some pictures and talk about some practical ideas for making dietary changes. All right. Whoops. Made my chat box too big. Okay. And first, a reminder about water. It is very common for people with Parkinson's to drink less water. They may feel less thirsty. They may have a change in their bowel and bladder function. And so it's kind of an automatic response to feeling like they have to use the restroom more frequently is, well, I'm just going to drink a little bit less water. Then I won't have to get up and use the restroom as often. But unfortunately, problems related to dehydration are significant. So falls, fractures, constipation, and more. These are things that you could be at increased risk with Parkinson's. And so we want to make sure that we are optimizing health, minimizing potential problems in every way possible. Water is a huge part of our brain and how it functions. It helps regulate body temperature, blood, and blood pressure, which is something that can be different for people with Parkinson's. Many people with Parkinson's have lower blood pressure or have orthostatic hypotension, where they have a drop in their blood pressure when they go up into standing. This potentially can be dangerous if you actually get lightheaded or dizzy. That can affect your balance. Our bone health is related to a hydration level. The cushions in our joints, if you have any joint pain, hydration levels are related to that. Removing waste and helping your digestive system move. Help carry nutrients and oxygen to your cells, moistens oxygen for breathing, help converts food to energy, protects and cushions your vital organs, helps your body absorb nutrients, and makes up 75% of your muscles. If you want to have stronger, bigger muscles, you've got to be hydrated. So hydration, drinking water, I think just seems like so obvious, but many, many people are dehydrated. And we're going into summer where the weather is going to be hotter. And so it's extra, extra important to focus on hydration. So hopefully you all have some water with you as you're listening to this lecture. Let's sip on water as we go. And hydration is really low-hanging fruit. If you hydrate well during the day, you can feel better very quickly, and it doesn't take that much work. So how much should you drink? A minimum of 60 ounces. There's kind of a rule that says take your body weight in pounds, and half of that is how many ounces that you should aim for in a day. So minimum of 60 in most cases, more if you are constipated or have low blood pressure. Research that I found recommends between 80 and 100 ounces for those with low blood pressure. You can add things like electrolytes if it helps to give it flavor. If you do have low blood pressure, you can check with your doctor, but electrolytes that have some sodium can be helpful in you keeping more of that fluid in your body. If you're just bored of water and you want it to taste better, you can add fresh fruit or vegetables or herbs, mint, a few drops of juice, make it bubbly, soda stream for homemade sparkling water. There's a lot of things you can do to make water more interesting and to taste better to help you drink more. All right, so that was hydration is important. We're going to move on to the food. So when it comes to nutrition research, it is very difficult to do nutrition research because we can't isolate, each individual food group. No one's just going to eat one thing. We all eat multiple things at every meal, every day, every week, every month. And to really control what people eat is also very difficult. There are some research studies that have happened where they provide all the food and you're not supposed to eat anything else. but that is a very expensive study to run. And it's also somewhat difficult to really know, are people only eating the food that we're giving them, or are they kind of cheating or eating other food? And, how much can you control what you eat? Are you the one doing the grocery shopping, the meal prep? Do you go out to eat with your friends? Food is just extremely complicated to do research studies. So we don't have just these, clear-cut randomized control studies. Okay, eat this, you'll do better. Eat this, you'll do worse. It is not that simple when it comes to food. And it's also hard to do like a randomized control study where you have a placebo. Everybody's going to be eating something. It's just, and some people might be eating some healthy food and some unhealthy food. And is it more important to eat healthy food, or is it more important to avoid unhealthy food, or should we be trying to do both? It's just very, very complicated. So there are not just easy, clear-cut answers. Food is also something that is very important to people. You tell one person, okay, don't eat this, that might be no big deal to them, or it might be devastating. Something like ice cream. Some people are like, I don't eat ice cream that often, not a big deal. Other people are like, ice cream, I have it every single night, and it is very related to my quality of life. So during this lecture today, I hope that you are open-minded to hear and learn some information and maybe think about some changes that you could make. What is something that you could do to move the needle and move in a healthier direction without completely ruining your quality of life? So some of the research we have that helps us is looking at what food groups are related to increased or decreased risk of getting Parkinson's. So that is some research. There's some big studies where large groups of people are being followed over the long term, and then they see who goes on to get heart disease or cancer or diabetes or Parkinson's. And then they look at their dietary patterns and they see, okay, are there patterns for this group of people? So in this study, this review, they talk about how Parkinson's is the second most prevalent neurodegenerative disease in aging individuals. There both is genetic susceptibility, so our genes play a role, but not everyone has specific genes, and many people do not have any genetic component that we understand at this point, but we all have genetic predispositions for different things. And then environmental factors play a role. Environmental factors have to do with the air we breathe, the water that we drink, where we live, what we're exposed to in terms of chemicals. But one of the main ways that we get exposed to our environment is through what we eat. So recent epidemiological studies have revealed the promise of some nutrients in reducing the risk of Parkinson's. In contrast, other nutrients may be involved in the etiology. So this study is looking at what people ate before they were diagnosed. Then whether those same food groups are related to progression once you have Parkinson's is a whole nother thing that has to be looked at. It makes sense that something that increases or decreases your risk of getting Parkinson's in the first place may also be related to the speed of progression once you're diagnosed, but we basically can't say that for sure. We don't know. So the food groups that they found that really related to less likelihood of getting Parkinson's or more is on this table. So on the side that provided neuroprotection and decreased risk of getting Parkinson's, omega-3s, vegetables, fruits, carotenoids, which pretty much are in fruits and vegetables, genistein, tea, caffeine, and resveratrol. In the middle, which basically means there's conflicting information. There might, in some cases, it looks beneficial, in some cases not. MUFA, PUFA, saturated fat, vitamin C, D, E, riboflavin, carbohydrates, and meat. On the negative side, that seems to be related to increased risk of Parkinson's and neurodegeneration, is milk and dairy products. So that is something that if from today's lecture, if you said, okay, there's one change I'm going to consider making, maybe it could be that you reduce or try to eliminate dairy from your diet, if at all possible. Some people may say that's absolutely not an option. Okay, then keep eating it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just sharing information, and you get to decide what changes you do or don't make based on this information. But this is what the research is saying. So why would that be? A lot of people are like, what would be wrong with dairy? So from the book, How Not to Die, there he goes through and reviews multiple studies. So for one, people with Parkinson's have been found to have elevated levels of an organochloride pesticide in their bloodstreams, the class of largely banned pesticides that includes DDT. So some things that are banned now were not banned when someone is 70 now was maybe young. Also, a lot of these pesticides and chemicals in our environment even if we stop using them, they still are in our environment for a long time. And so unfortunately, we may still continue to be exposed to these things. So that's one reason, is having increased pesticides, which it may mean that you eat food that has more pesticides, or that you live close to an agricultural area, or different people's bodies have different abilities to get waste products out. So some people are really able to clear their system faster. And that's just something like we don't have control over that really. We just all genetically have different abilities to kind of clear things out of our system, or for some of us, those things stay in our system longer. Autopsy studies have also found elevated levels of pesticides in the brain tissue of those with Parkinson's. People who eat a more plant-based diet have significantly lower concentrations of toxins, heavy metals, et cetera, in their body, because there is something called bioaccumulation. So if you eat grains yourself, you eat a certain amount of those grains and, probably do have some level of exposure to pesticides. If you eat a cow, if you eat meat from a cow or dairy from a cow, that cow eats a lot of grains, a lot of food every single day. And so the amount of toxins inside that animal are much higher than if you just eat those grains yourself. Even though they might both have pesticides on them, the volume that we eat is way lower than the volume that a cow eats over their lifetime before, as they're grown up, before they're killed to serve that meat for people to eat. So bioaccumulation is something really to pay attention to in terms of what you're eating. And that's why within fishes, there's a big difference of what type of fish you eat. The bigger, fattier fish usually have more bioaccumulation of toxins than small fish do. So that's a consideration if you eat seafood. So there's also consideration with dairy that maybe there's something in dairy itself. So there are alternative explanations for the clear-cut link between dairy and PD. For example, pollutant levels wouldn't explain why PD appears more closely tied to the consumption of milk sugar, lactose, than to milk fat, more closely tied to milk than to butter. So that's when they're like, well, maybe there's something actually in dairy itself that is impacting Parkinson's. Maybe the culprit is galactose, the sugar in milk, blamed for an increased risk of bone fractures, cancer, and death. Those with an inability to detoxify the galactose in milk not only suffer damage to their bones, but also to their brain. So again, that ability to detoxify, which is different with different people. And as far as I know, that's not something we can measure to know, am I someone who can detox better or not? Another possible link with dairy: milk consumption lowers blood levels of uric acid, an important brain antioxidant shown to protect nerve cells against the oxidative stress caused by pesticides. Uric acid may slow progression of Huntington's and Parkinson's. Too much uric acid, however, can crystallize in your joints and cause a painful disease called gout. So we want to be in the sweet spot. We want to have enough uric acid in our blood that it's benefiting our brain, but not so much that we get gout. So we want that healthy balance. Those on a dairy-free, plant-based diet appear to hit the sweet spot in terms of the most optimal uric acid levels for longevity. So there are kind of three main hypotheses: neurotoxins in the dairy supply, maybe something about the milk sugar, and then also how dairy affects uric acid. So dairy is something that you may want to consider minimizing or cutting out. I myself have made that choice based on research. I do not consume any dairy. The good news is there are options, though. We are living in a time where there are a lot of plant-based and vegan options for things like cheddar slices, if you want to put it on a sandwich or put it on a plant burger or on a regular burger. Feta cheese. I love a Greek salad, so I use this plant-based feta cheese to give that flavor that I love. Miyoko's makes a great butter. There are a lot of different options for yogurts and for ice creams. So pretty much anything now, you can get a plant-based product if you want to. Most regular grocery stores carry them. And many of them are very good. If you try something and you don't like it, it doesn't mean that all of the products are going to be bad. You want to try different things and see what you like. But these products are made out of almonds, oats, coconut, cashews, so many different things, and they're really delicious. So I don't feel like I'm missing out really on anything. A case study talking about an individual who had a really dramatic response to a change in diet. So at age 51, this person had onset of urinary frequency and urgency and erectile dysfunction. 4 years later, he developed bradykinesia, bilateral rigidity, start hesitation, and sudden transient freezing. He was diagnosed with Parkinsonism. So, he had other symptoms to start with, but then he started to develop the symptoms of Parkinson's. He was on carbidopa-levodopa, which improved his gait problems, but he had wearing off motor fluctuation. So the medication would help, but then it would wear off and he would have more trouble walking. And he was going through those cycles kind of up and down with regards to the medication. About 9 months ago, he changed his diet to avoid protein during breakfast and lunch and found he had a better, more predictable response to levodopa. After 2 months, he adopted a vegan diet and since then has experienced steady and dramatic improvement in his motor symptoms. His gait has returned to almost normal with near complete resolution of freezing and start hesitation. He now runs and ice skates and was able to reduce levodopa from 2,175 milligrams a day to 1,300 milligrams a day. So he still takes medication, certainly, and that is helping him. But the change to his diet basically really helped medication work better so that he experiences less wearing off, better symptoms, and is doing much better overall. So seeing individual cases to me is very inspiring, but it's also really important for us to have those bigger research studies whenever possible. All right, so then we've got data for individuals, a case study. We have data on dietary patterns and how they influence getting Parkinson's. Now we can look at data for people who are living with Parkinson's. So this research comes from a study called MVP, Modifiable Variables in Parkinson's, that a researcher and naturopathic doctor named Lori Mishley is running. She lives up in Seattle, and she has thousands of people participating in this study, and they fill out an extensive survey every 6 months, including information about their medication, supplements, lifestyle habits, exercise, sleep, dietary patterns, a few other things. So it's a pretty involved study. I highly recommend participating if you're not already. This is really helpful data for us. So what she is able to look at then is who's doing better, who's doing worse, and how do dietary choices and eating patterns correlate with people who have more or less symptoms or who are doing better or worse. This study cannot prove causation. So we can't say because people are eating this way, they are worse, or because they're eating this way, they are better. This is correlational data. But it lines up with a lot of other data. And so it's like, okay, once there are a study saying if you eat this way, you're going to have reduced risk of Parkinson's. If you eat this way, you're going to have better symptoms. You're going to feel better. And this research says you're going to have better brain health, and this is better for your brain. When it all lines up, it starts to make sense that this may really be having a difference and may cause a change in your Parkinson's. So when it comes to the food groups, the foods that are in green are ones that are correlated with people having less symptoms and doing better over time. Fresh vegetables is number one. Fresh fruit, nuts and seeds, fish, non-fried, wine, olive oil, coconut oil, and fresh herbs. That lines up with what we saw here: tea, resveratrol, omega-3s, vegetables and fruits. It's the same. It's a very similar list. This is in people who, whether or not they go on to develop Parkinson's, this is people who are living with Parkinson's. Then looking at the food groups for people who are not feeling as good, having worse symptoms, we'll start from the bottom: canned fruit, diet soda, fried foods, ice cream, canned vegetables, beef, pasta, soda, plastic bottle drinks, chicken, pork, frozen vegetables, yogurt, cheese, milk. So we see multiple dairy products on here. We also see some meat products and then processed foods. So some of this may, there might be some controversy, but in many cases, we know fried foods are not good for us. And if you go out to eat, you probably eat a decent amount of fried food. Or if you eat packaged foods at home, chips, fries, things like that are really not good for us. So even though, potato chips or fries might be plant-based or vegan, they are not healthy. So vegan does not equal healthy and vice versa. Plant-based, more whole foods, and the way that we cook foods really makes a difference. So you might print this and post it on your fridge and say, when I go to eat, I'm really going to try to focus on eating as much of these things as possible. And I'm going to try to minimize these things. Other behaviors that they see that are correlated with doing better: when people cook most of their meals, then you know exactly what's going in it. I avoid artificial sweeteners. I avoid artificial colors and flavors. I routinely prepare meals for others. I try to eat organically grown foods when possible. I buy from local farmers. So those habits are correlated with people who are doing better. I find it difficult to afford healthy food, and it is difficult to afford groceries. We know that there's a huge impact of our financial resources on our overall health. That is studied across many populations, many ages. So obviously you have to take that into consideration, but it is possible, buying things in bulk, buying grains, fruits, vegetables. In many cases, those can be less expensive foods. And so, but it does, take figuring out what resources do I have? How can I be smartest in using those resources? And it's just, an unfair part of our world and our society that our financial resources have such a huge impact on our health. The role of diet. Okay, of course, this is my little window here is covering up exactly what it says up there. But this study looked at different dietary patterns and how that impacted people. What they found is when people were eating more of a Mediterranean diet, they had decreased risk of getting Parkinson's, decreased risk of having kind of the premotor or prodromal Parkinson's. And if they did get Parkinson's, they were older when it happened. So it probably, kept them healthy for longer. The MIND diet, which is similar to the Mediterranean, but just with some slight tweaks, also showed decreased Parkinson's risk, increased age at onset, also improved cognitive function, and increased total antioxidant capacity. So this type of dietary pattern, which you probably have heard of before, it's starting to look like, okay, this is one way that we could kind of get organized about what we're going to eat that is helpful in saying, okay, we're going to eat more fruits and vegetables and whole grains and non-fried fish, wine, olive oil, and we're going to minimize processed foods. So research happening there. They also looked at ketogenic diet, the protein restricted diet. And those were the main ones that they looked at. So they looked at the different dietary patterns and what was the research that supported each of them. Here, Dr. Mishley also published looking at the difference between the MIND and Mediterranean diet scores in outcomes. And so what they found is whether people were eating a Mediterranean diet or MIND diet, they were doing better than average, but the MIND diet was even more beneficial than the Mediterranean diet. So what is the MIND diet? It is the Mediterranean DASH diet. So the DASH diet was developed for heart health. So they took the Mediterranean diet and this heart health diet and put them together as a strategy for neurodegenerative delay and to really help improve brain health. The brain healthy items included on the MIND diet is trying, and this is, per day and some per week. So 3+ servings a day of whole grains. So can you have some oatmeal at breakfast? Can you have some whole grains as part of your snack or even as part of your lunch or dinner? At least 1 serving a day of vegetables other than green leafy. So the goal is 6+ servings a week of green leafy vegetables. So pretty much every day, and then some other vegetables. So that is not an unreasonable amount. We're trying to eat vegetables every day, ideally, maybe even at every meal or at least at lunch and dinner. Green leafy vegetables are very significant in terms of brain health. There's a lot of research. 5+ servings a week of nuts. Nuts are very good for us as well. Good protein, healthy fats, antioxidants, fiber, omega-3s. So there's a lot of good things in nuts. 4+ meals a week of beans, 2+ servings a week of berries, 2+ meals a week of poultry, 1 meal a week of fish, and olive oil if added fat is used. Unhealthy foods to minimize: pastries and sweets, red meat, including beef, pork, and lamb, cheese, fried foods, butter, or stick margarine. So this is also one that you could post up to try to remind you, when you go to plan your dinners, have you eaten these things yet? Can you do a veggie scramble for breakfast and start to get those vegetables in right from the beginning of the day? So if you start to look at these things, you might start to think about how you might consider eating a little bit differently. So those are some of the studies starting to look at and say, okay, this dietary pattern is related to decreased risk of getting Parkinson's, to having correlated with less symptoms once you're living with Parkinson's, and helping people have better outcomes. When we're thinking specifically about brain health, When we want to eat for brain health, we want to make sure we're getting in omega-3 fatty acids. They are crucial for building and repairing brain cells, are essential for learning and memory. Good sources, fatty fish, flax seeds, soybeans, nuts, and supplements in some cases. We want to have lots of antioxidants in our diet, protects brain cells from oxidative stress and inflammation. Good sources, berries. Berries have been shown in research to delay memory decline. Trying to have some berries every day. Dark chocolate, there's good news. Vegetables, nuts and seeds, coffee and tea. So again, thinking of when can I fit each of these things in? I'm going to have berries with breakfast. I'm going to have coffee or tea in the morning. I'm going to think about maybe I have a trail mix for some dried fruit and having some nuts and seeds or some granola that has those things in it. Dark chocolate can be your dessert. And then vegetables kind of throughout the day as well. Vitamins and minerals, B vitamins, vitamin K, vitamin D, vitamin E, and minerals. These are mostly found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Other beneficial foods, whole grains, avocados, bees, and turmeric. So the good news is there's lots of things to eat that are going to be helpful. So examples for breakfast, we've got an oatmeal with bananas, a nut butter, some berries in there as well. It's beautiful and delicious. We've got a smoothie bowl here with granola and some berries. We've got a tofu scramble here for lunch, or not lunch, for breakfast in a wrap with some beans and greens and other vegetables. So that's like a breakfast burrito with slightly different ingredients, or a breakfast bowl. So again, this is a tofu scramble that you can just scramble it up on your stove like you would with eggs. And then we've got our avocados, we've got beans, we've got seeds on top, we've got some spices in there. We are incorporating all of those foods that are healthy for us right from breakfast. So we are starting with a lot of potential for success that day, getting good nutrients in, good fiber, so things can keep moving throughout our system throughout the day. Next consideration is gut health and digestion. So eating a diverse diet rich in fiber and fermented foods can significantly improve gut health. High fiber foods, again, we're hearing some of the same things. Whole grains, legumes, leafy greens are crucial for gut health. They provide food for beneficial gut bacteria, which produce substances to support digestion and reduce inflammation. Plant-based foods are the foods that include fiber. So dairy, meat, those kinds of foods, processed foods are very low in fiber. And fiber deficiency is really the problem that we have in the US and in places. People are not eating enough fiber every day, and fiber is super important, not just to reduce constipation, but to give those microbiomes good things to eat themselves. So a diverse intake of plant-based foods, including a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, can support a diverse and healthy gut microbiome. I am not saying that you have to become 100% plant-based or vegan, but what you do want to emphasize is you want to emphasize those plant-based products in your meal. Even if you're having fish or chicken or something else, you really want to try to have a higher volume of those plant-based foods and a smaller volume of the meat product. Specific foods to include legumes, black beans, chickpeas. Other legumes are excellent sources of fiber and protein. Whole grains, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, maybe even some fermented vegetables are helpful. Sauerkraut, kimchi, and other things if you like them. If you don't, that's okay. You don't have to eat these. You could get a lot of good nutrients from these other ones. If you have found that something like beans or legumes is difficult for you to digest, certainly when you make changes to your diet, your gut microbiome is used to digesting the things that you are used to eating. It takes a few days when you transition your diet for you to change your gut microbiome so that it now can digest the foods. So if you eat beans infrequently, your gut microbiome isn't going to get used to digesting that. So that's why frequency, maybe a smaller amount, but a higher frequency is going to help your gut microbiome make that shift and be able to digest those foods. So start with small amounts and kind of make smaller changes to your diet over time. Making a huge change all at once may cause you some distress in your gut. It doesn't mean that you can't eat those things or that it's not good for you, but you may have made too big of a change all at once and it just was a little bit upsetting for your system. Foods to limit or avoid when it comes to gut health: ultra-processed foods. They don't really have a lot of nutrients in them, and they are not feeding our healthy gut microbiome. Sugary drinks and snacks. High sugar intake can disrupt the gut microbiome as well. Fried and fatty foods. These foods can be difficult to digest and may contribute to inflammation. So things, are all kind of adding up. We're hearing some of the same things that we want to be eating more of and some of the same things that we want to be limiting. So what about for lunch? We could make a sandwich. This is a chickpea, like a tuna. So you take chickpeas, you smash them up, you put in, some different sauces, some relish, some mustard. I see some like cut up herbs and onions in there, and you mash that all up, put it on a sandwich with some tomato and onions. Looks delicious, nice whole grain bread. We can just have kind of it's sort of a salad or just a mix of different cut up veggies. We've got chickpeas here as well, so you're getting protein in. Here we've got some more like roasted type vegetables, making a salad. How beautiful is that? And here's more of like an Asian style. We've got some whole grains here, some different vegetables, and then a nice sauce on the top. So there are a lot of different ways that you can organize your food, your eating patterns. For me, I typically do breakfast is about the same for the week. So I'm, buying certain things. Lunch, I often do kind of a similar lunch throughout the week. I plan for that and buy things, and it's about the same. And then dinner is different each day. Depending on your energy levels, though, maybe dinner is the one that is the same for a week, or maybe you have 2 or 3 meals that you rotate through. So it's not something new and different every single meal. It keeps things interesting, but maybe lunch is the one that you have more variety if you have more energy for prepping lunch. And then maybe dinner is a little bit more simple. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You just want to think about what are the changes that I want to make, and then how do I get started in making that shift? The last consideration that is super important is medication absorption. So if you are not taking medication yet, focusing on the brain health and gut health and digestion, that's the main area to focus on. But most people with Parkinson's are taking medication, and making sure that medication absorbs as well as possible makes a huge difference in how you feel and how successful you are living with Parkinson's. So in this article that Dr. Eric Alskog wrote, he is a movement disorders neurologist from the Mayo Clinic. He explains that carbidopa-levodopa must be taken on an empty stomach. It is a large neutral amino acid that crosses the blood-brain barrier via a molecular transporter, which selectively binds all amino acids from that class. Digestion of dietary proteins liberates amino acids into the circulation, and they compete with levodopa for transport across the blood-brain barrier. This transport system is easily saturated. And so if you take your medication with meals, it can substantially reduce efficacy. To ensure that levodopa passage across the blood-brain barrier is not compromised, patients should be advised to take their carbidopa-levo doses an hour or more before or 2 hours after eating. Pharmacists may dispense carbidopa-levodopa with labeling stating take with meals, which obviously is incorrect. However, for patients who experience nausea, it is acceptable to take carbidopa-levodopa with dry bread, soda crackers, a banana, some other non-protein food. So in many cases, when you first start medication, your neurologist might say take it with meals. That is to help minimize side effects and nausea. But over time, the goal is to take medication on an empty stomach if that is tolerated, if at all possible, so that it can work better. Protein consideration. So protein can delay or reduce absorption of levodopa into the bloodstream and across the blood-brain barrier. Interference is greater with meat proteins than plant proteins. This is due to the fact that meat protein is more slowly absorbed. So if you're eating something like chickpeas, there is protein in there. Chickpeas and beans have protein, but not quite as much as a meat product. And also there is fiber, which helps facilitate things moving along. So it is important to eat protein, but if you're able to take medication on the empty stomach or separate it from protein, that is ideal. And then what protein you eat will make a difference over time. This is the pretty old research from 1987, but they showed that plasma levels of amino acids correlate with motor fluctuations in Parkinson's. So even though some people had higher plasma levodopa levels, when they had more amino acids from their food, they experienced more Parkinson's symptoms. On a low protein diet, the amino acid levels remained low, and all patients were consistently dyskinetic throughout the day, even though mean plasma levodopa levels were somewhat lower than the people on the high protein diet. So how much protein you eat in a day can really impact medication absorption, both to the point where you feel more off and you have more Parkinson's symptoms, or if you were on really low protein, then you might have more dyskinesia. And since we tend to eat different things each meal, each day, that can be something that really can contribute to you experiencing ups and downs. And maybe some days you do feel dyskinetic and have some extra movement. Some days you feel more off, or that changes throughout the day. So this is something that if you are interested, if those motor fluctuations are bothersome to you, you might start to be a little bit more consistent with your dietary patterns of how much protein you eat and how much fiber and what you eat to help your medication be more consistent as well. So how much protein do you need? There is a lot of discussion now about trying to get people to eat really high levels of protein, and that is not borne out in most of the research. 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight works out to about 40 to 75 grams for most people who weigh 115 to 200 pounds. So somewhere between 40 to 75 grams is what most of us need per day. And if you're eating enough food, most people are getting enough protein. You don't have to eat super, super high levels of protein to be healthy. Recent studies have shown that reduced protein intake or a low protein, high carbohydrate diet actually plays a critical role in longevity and metabolic health. When it comes to carbohydrates, so we are not talking about cookies and processed cereals and pancakes and things like that. We are talking about whole grains, fruit, vegetables, that is where you are getting your carbohydrates from. We had Kelly Morrow, who is a registered dietitian at Seattle Integrative Medicine. She has shared that she finds people do best when they're eating 8 to 10 grams of protein 4 to 6 times a day. So they're eating protein, but they're kind of spreading it out and not having huge meals that then seem to affect their medication absorption. So that is her recommendation. So certainly protein is necessary. We want to maintain, maybe even improve our muscle mass and really work on that as we age, since the tendency is for people to lose muscle mass. What is important, though, is muscle mass is not just based on what we consume in terms of protein. It is based on the stimulus provided to our muscles. So you can eat kind of an adequate level of protein, but you need to be doing strength training to actually get stronger. You could eat tons of protein in a day, but if you are not exercising or doing strength training, your body is just taking it in and pooping it out. It's not doing anything if you are not providing the stimulus for your muscles to get stronger. So strength training is one of the most important things for you to do, and making sure to eat adequate food. This study also looked at the effects of fiber. So they showed that in a diet that was rich in insoluble fiber, and how it affected motor symptoms for people. Were people off? Were they dyskinetic? And mean fiber intake was 28 grams. This was actually administered as a tablet mixed with water before each dose. In all patients, when they consumed more fiber, the severity of constipation improved. There was improved constipation and higher bioavailability of levodopa. And their scores on the UPDRS in terms of Parkinson symptoms were improved for the group that increased their fiber intake after 2 weeks and 2 months. So it shows more fiber is going to help reduce constipation, help your medication work better, and help you experience less symptoms. So that is what you want to focus on a daily basis, is where is your fiber coming from? Is there fiber in your breakfast, fiber in your lunch, fiber in your dinner, fiber in your snacks? The more fiber you eat, the better. So what could that look like for a dinner? Here we've got some whole grains and then a stir fry with the sauce that looks delicious. It's got cashews in there. You could have tofu if you like that. You could have another source of protein. Here we've got a beautiful eggplant that is stuffed with yummy ingredients. Another bowl here, just a different type of bowl, lentils. Lentils are one of the healthiest foods that you can consume. Here's a sweet potato that is roasted with toppings on top of it. Just so many options for delicious, beautiful food that you can eat. I understand that changing your diet is something that can be difficult, though, if you're used to eating a certain way and preparing certain foods. I do not want this to be overwhelming or thinking that you're going to make things from scratch different for every single meal. You want to just start to make some shifts to what you're eating if you want to. Like I said, you don't have to. So not every meal has to be made from scratch. There are meal delivery options. So if it helps you to have few of your meals delivered per week, this is a meal delivery called Thistle, which is fresh food. So they deliver food twice a week if you're eating it throughout the week. And they have things like a sweet potato stew, jalapeno and pinto bacon bowl. These are all plant-based. So their bacon is made out of something else. Mocha oats with a coconut latte cream, polenta almond cake with chia jam, roasted Brussels balsamic bowl. I've done this on myself. It is very delicious. They show the ingredients for smoothies. So smoothies can be a great thing to have for breakfast, a great thing for snacks. Sweet potato and wild rice hash, just looking at it can give you ideas for meals. So that's a great breakfast as well. And broccoli and a plant-based cheese. Oh, and this one is Daily Harvest, which is frozen. So there are options for meal delivery that are fresh, that are frozen. That's obviously going to last longer. So, and there are different pricing for different options. So you can look and see what works for you. There are also frozen meals at the grocery store. Blue Zones Kitchen has these great meals. I get these on a regular basis. They have a burrito bowl, an heirloom rice bowl, sesame ginger bowl, minestrone casserole. These all have beans, legumes, vegetables, whole grains, spices, all the things that we have talked about in a meal that you can microwave for 3.5 minutes, and it is all there right for you. So if you need some options, if you are feeling tired, if you are not feeling inspired, there are some great options that you can have. Amy's is a brand that makes things that also have meat and dairy in them as well, but they do have vegetable options and plant-based options. So they have Indian dishes, Mexican tamale with roasted vegetables, Thai, and this pizza that has no cheese, roasted vegetable is very good flavor. I have this on a pretty regular basis. So these are all frozen that, again, you can make for lunch, for dinner. We are trying to set ourselves up for success and make some things easier for us in our life while eating as healthy as possible. So options when you go out to eat, scan the menu ahead of time, seeing what kind of options there are, maybe picking certain restaurants because they have better healthy options. Focus on the cooking methods when you go out to eat. So choosing things that are steamed, grilled, baked, or poached as opposed to fried whenever possible. Prioritize vegetables in those meals. If you can get a side salad instead of fries and things like that, that can really be helpful. Look for dishes that really feature vegetables prominently. The more veggies you get in at each meal, the better. Look for more of the lean proteins like chicken, fish, turkey, maybe getting smaller portions or sharing a larger dish. Be mindful of sauces and dressings. Get them on the side so you can control the amount. So there's a lot of things you can do even if you enjoy going out to eat or do that frequently to eat healthier when you go out to eat. So to summarize, what we eat matters. It can improve our overall health, is likely to influence Parkinson's progression over time, or at a minimum, just help you keep your digestion moving slowly and help medication work better. Hydrate. Consider minimizing dairy intake if that is an option for you. Reduce processed foods. I think every person you talk to who is focused on healthy diet is going to agree on that. I don't think there's any argument there. Focus on eating more whole foods, vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, leafy greens, nuts, and spices. If you really feel at a loss for what to do, work with a dietitian, naturopathic doctor, or nutritionist. Let them know that you want to eat in this way and get some guidance on how to do that. The Mind Diet is a great place to start. So if you like to get actual cooking books or look up recipes online, look for the Mind Diet, and that is going to really focus on all those things that have been, shown in the multiple studies to be beneficial. So that's a great place to start. For more information, if you're really interested in nutrition, this website, nutritionfacts.org, is run by Dr. Michael Greger, who's a physician, and his whole focus is on looking at how nutrition influences every aspect of our health. So he has written multiple books, How Not to Die, How Not to Age, looking at longevity. He's got a lot of videos on his website. And you can, at the top here, you can put in Parkinson's in the search. He has a video on what the role meat may play in triggering Parkinson's disease, and that uric acid sweet spot. Could lactose explain the milk and Parkinson's disease link? Berries versus pesticides in Parkinson's. Yes, pesticides are not good for us, but berries is what helps us not absorb as much of the pesticides on the food that is difficult to completely avoid. Peppers and Parkinson's. The benefits of smoking without the risks. So there's research showing that people who smoke have decreased risk of getting Parkinson's. So the thought is that there's some protective effect of nicotine. No one is recommending that anyone pick up smoking, but it's interesting that there sometimes are things that can be beneficial even when they can otherwise be harmful. He has a whole video just talking about it. Is there something in tobacco that is protective against Parkinson's disease? Treating Parkinson's disease with diet, preventing Parkinson's disease with diet. treating Parkinson's disease with fava beans, treating Parkinson's disease with velvet beans or mucuna purins, low protein diet, coffee put to the test, the role milk may play. So he has a whole bunch of videos on here that you can watch. He goes in more in depth. He talks about the research studies. And I believe he had a family member who had Parkinson's too. So he has really a personal interest in Parkinson's specifically. And the good news is eating in this way, minimizing processed foods, kind of what we talked about here, these are good for every aspect of our health. It reduces risk of heart disease and cancer, risk of stroke, lung disease, diabetes. So some of the common ailments that are more common for people as we age and becoming more common in this country, these same types of changes that you may do for your Parkinson's can also improve other aspects of your health as well. When it comes to diet, we have an online membership in addition to our in-person membership. And the way that we incorporate dietary information is doing educational meetings like this. And then we also have a cooking class once a week on Wednesdays where we get together on Zoom and my friend Erin cooks, a different dish. We try new things. Sometimes it's dessert. Sometimes it's breakfast. Sometimes it's different ways of making tofu or different things. We have a turmeric latte that we make that you can put in your coffee. So there's so many great recipes that we've made over the years. That class continues, and it's a really fun opportunity just to come together and talk about food. Hey, I tried these things. I liked this. I didn't like this. We have show and tell. We share, what recipes we really enjoyed making. So that is something that is available to you if you were to join our online membership or if you joined us in person as well. So we provide coaching. We really focus the most on exercise, but we know that diet is important as well. After watching this webinar, if you are interested in joining our online membership, you can use the code FREEMONTH for 100% off the first month of your online membership. You also get a 7-day free trial. So you will get that information in a follow-up email after today's webinar. If you would like to join, if you have any questions, you can respond to that email and let me know. So I know that was a lot of information today. I apologize, but I also just felt like it was all really important information. I didn't want to keep it out. So hopefully you're able to kind of listen, take some of it in. Like I said, maybe think of one change that you can make. If more than one change is possible for you, then, by all means, make more changes if that is an option. But even just to start thinking about things a little bit differently, start thinking about what you're going to buy with your groceries, what you're going to eat if you go out to eat. There's just a lot of different ways that we can make changes to our diet that can be helpful. And so hopefully you heard something today that will help you make a good choice. And we recorded this meeting, so if you want to watch it again, you are welcome to. So thank you all for coming today. I will stop the recording now, and I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat, or you can unmute and ask me a question as well.